They say home is where the heart is. But what happens when your heart is pushed into the garage, boxed up, forgotten, and even replaced? 3 years ago, after my son Jordan's car accident, I moved into his home to help during his recovery. His wife, Anna, insisted, "It'll be temporary, just while he heals." I didn't ask for much, but I didn't know then that I was moving into a game I didn't know I was playing, until Anna's parents moved in with no warning. Then came the moment that changed everything. My suitcase on the porch, my name erased from the mailbox, the locks changed without a word. What Anna didn't know? I still owned the house. Hit the subscribe button to follow through my story, because what I did next still sends chills down their spines. Let's start from where it began. It started with a soft suggestion, like most betrayals do. "Mom, why don't you take the guest room?" Jordan had said, gesturing with that tired smile that hadn't quite returned since the accident. "It'll be easier for you to be close, and Anna thinks it's best." Anna smiled beside him, tight-lipped, polished, professional. Always professional. Her words were coated in sugar, but her eyes never smiled. "You'll have your own space. We just want you to be comfortable while Jordan recovers." Comfortable. That word lingered like a false promise. The guest room was small, wedged between the laundry and the bathroom. The bed was stiff, the curtains thin, and the closet already half filled with things that weren't mine. I told myself it was fine. After all, I wasn't there for luxury. I was there for Jordan, my son, my only child. The boy I raised alone after his father passed away in the winter of '98, when he was barely 10 and still called me Mommy in public. I had been a nurse then, still on night shifts, juggling fevers and IVs and PTA meetings. I'd worked double shifts to get him through college, skipped vacations, sold my jewelry when the tuition bills stacked too high. I gave him everything because that's what mothers do, quietly, willingly, without expecting applause. Just a little respect, a little place to stand. And at first, Anna had shown me kindness. Fresh flowers in a vase, herbal tea in the pantry. "Thank you for everything, Elaine," she would say after dinner, hands folded like a princess. But slowly, those words stopped coming. One night she forgot to leave a plate for me. The next, she made a snide comment about the way I folded their towels. "Oh, we prefer them this way," she said, refolding them like I'd done it all wrong. Like I hadn't folded towels for 3 decades while juggling charts and chemo and a growing boy. Jordan didn't say much. He'd sit quietly, rubbing the scar on his left shoulder from the accident, looking away whenever tension rose. I told myself he was still healing, that the silence wasn't abandonment, it was pain. But then came the whispers behind doors, the half-closed kitchen conversations that stopped when I walked in, the clipped tones between Anna and her mother on the phone, the frequent mention of space and boundaries and how it's not healthy to rely on her forever. One Thursday afternoon, I returned from the grocery store, still buying the things Anna liked, the soy milk and the gluten-free crackers, and there they were, Anna's parents, standing in the foyer with matching roller bags and a smug air of entitlement. "Oh," I said, startled. "Are you visiting?" Anna looked up from her phone, casual. "They're moving in, just for a while. It'll be great to have both sets of parents under one roof." Both sets. As if I was still included in that equation. I looked at Jordan. He looked at the floor. I didn't argue. Not then. I just carried the bags of groceries into the kitchen like a good ghost. Like someone already halfway forgotten. Over the next few days, my world shrank to a corner. Anna's parents took over the living room, the dining table, the kitchen. They had opinions about everything, how I cooked, how I dressed, even the extra noise I made during my morning coffee. My seat at the table disappeared. My name vanished from the group texts. And one evening, after a particularly tense silence at dinner, I returned to the guest room to find my suitcase packed neatly on the bed. A note sat on top, written in Anna's sharp, looping cursive. We think it's time you find a place of your own. It's been wonderful having you, but we need space to grow as a family. We need space. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd, so cruel in its civility. That night, I sat in my car, parked 2 blocks away, because I couldn't bear to sleep in a house where I was no longer wanted. I watched the windows glow with warm yellow light, the silhouettes of people moving inside, laughing, probably, living. While I sat in the cold, I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I opened the glove box, pulled out the manila folder I had kept tucked away since my husband's passing. The deed, the property records, all in my name. Anna didn't know that Jordan never changed it, that even after we paid it off, he insisted it stay with me. For everything you've done, he'd said, handing me the final check. You deserve this. And I did. I stared at that paper in the dim light of the dashboard. My name, printed in bold legal letters. It didn't warm me, but it grounded me. Reminded me that I wasn't powerless. I was just quiet. There's a difference. The next morning, before they were even awake, I made 2 phone calls. One to a realtor, the other to a moving company. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't yell. I didn't even pack loudly. But by the time Anna walked into the kitchen in her designer robe, sipping the coffee I used to brew, the for sale sign was already on the lawn, and I was already gone. The first message came just after noon. Hey Mom, everything okay? Anna said you went out early. It was from Jordan, of course, still trying to keep the peace, still pretending not to see the fire he helped build. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard, but I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't split us further. Or maybe we'd already split, he just hadn't noticed the crack. Instead, I sat in the corner booth of a small cafe downtown, a place I hadn't been in years. I used to meet my friend Lisa here when we were both on lunch breaks from the hospital. We'd sip terrible coffee and laugh about the impossible patients, the tired feet, the dreams we'd put on hold for families. Lisa moved to Florida 5 years ago. She texts every Christmas. The waitress brought me a fresh cup. She had kind eyes and didn't rush me, even though I hadn't ordered more than toast. The world outside kept moving. Mothers with strollers, students with earbuds, couples arguing about bills or takeout or love. But inside that cafe, time held still just long enough for me to breathe. I called Janet next, my realtor. She was the same woman who sold Jordan and Anna their first condo. She remembered me. You sound different, Elaine, she said after a moment of silence. I am. Well then, she replied briskly. Let's get to work. The listing went live that evening. Photos were already on file from a valuation I'd done a year ago. The house had a sprawling backyard, granite countertops, and one of those open-concept kitchens Anna had always bragged about. I remember scrubbing the floors for hours when the appraiser came. Jordan said the kitchen would be great for hosting. I used to imagine grandchildren running barefoot down the hallway. Funny, how dreams like that die quietly. No ceremony, just stillness. By the time Anna saw the sign out front, bright red letters against a pristine white post, I was sitting in a hotel room across town, feet tucked under me, watching the sunset from a balcony I didn't have to share. My phone started buzzing. First Jordan, then Anna again. Voicemails, texts, missed calls. I watched them stack up like a pile of unsaid apologies I had no interest in opening. Eventually, I played one. Mom, what the hell is going on? There's a sign in the yard. The neighbors are asking questions. Please, just call me. His voice was tight, panicked, but I couldn't tell if it was worry or embarrassment. Maybe both. Maybe finally, he realized something wasn't right. The next day, Anna called from a different number. I answered, not out of curiosity, but clarity. I wanted to hear the sound of her desperation. Just once. "You can't do this," she said, voice strained but controlled. "We live here." "No," I replied calmly. "You stayed there. I lived there." There was a pause. Then the sharp edge returned. "This is petty, vindictive. Jordan won't forgive you." I almost laughed. The same Jordan who watched me carry groceries while Anna criticized the brand? The same son who looked away when I was squeezed out of dinners and conversations and family plans? Forgiveness from him suddenly felt like a coin I no longer needed. "I'm not looking for forgiveness," I said. "I'm reclaiming peace." "You'll destroy this family." "No, Anna. You already did." I ended the call. Jordan texted again on the third day. "Can we talk? Just us?" I told him to meet me at the park near the hospital where I used to work. The same bench where I used to eat sandwiches on my break, watching birds hop between breadcrumbs. He showed up late. He looked thinner, older. Grief changes a man. So does cowardice. "Mom," he started, sitting down heavily. "This is crazy." "Is it?" He hesitated. "Anna didn't mean to push you out." "She packed my suitcase, Jordan." His jaw clenched. He had no answer. And for the first time, I didn't fill the silence for him. I let it hang there like a verdict. "I didn't know," he said finally. "Not really." "You didn't want to know." He looked at me then, really looked. "Why didn't you just talk to me first?" "Because I've talked, Jordan. For years. You just stopped hearing." He rubbed his hands together, staring at the grass. "Where will we go?" I shrugged. "There's a rental down the street. Nice place. Good lighting." He looked at me like I'd betrayed him. But I didn't feel guilt. Only the slow satisfaction of choosing myself after decades of erasure. "You really sold it?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "I signed the papers this morning." He nodded, eyes glassy. "She's furious." "She should be." He didn't ask for the buyer's name. He didn't need to. It wasn't his house anymore. When he left, I stayed on that bench for a long time, watching the same birds, listening to the same wind. And for the first time in years, I felt still, whole. They'd taken my place in the house, but I'd reclaimed my place in the world. The news spread fast. Not because I said anything, because Anna couldn't keep her voice down. She had never learned how to lose gracefully, and now the neighborhood knew it. Apparently, she screamed at the movers, accused them of theft when they came to pack up the dining set, my dining set, bought the year Jordan graduated college. She called the realtor's office twice an hour demanding updates, threats thinly veiled in polite hysteria. By the third day, she was standing in the driveway with her phone in one hand and a glass of wine in the other, pacing in bare feet like a ghost lost in daylight. Jordan, to his credit, had stopped trying to fix it. Or maybe he just didn't know how. I imagined the conversation between them. Him asking why she did it, her denying, deflecting, rebranding my eviction as a misunderstanding. That was her talent, redefining cruelty with soft words. But this time, there was no spin clean enough to scrub away the truth. The sale had finalized. The paperwork was signed. The new owners, a young couple expecting their first child, were set to move in within a week. That gave Anna just enough time to unravel. I stayed in my hotel room, not hiding, just observing. I watched from a distance as calls rolled in, friends, family, the usual concerned voices who had been silent when I was sleeping in the guest room next to the washing machine. Funny how people notice things only when it causes a scene. Carol, my old neighbor, was the first to call with any real sincerity. She'd been watching this unfold from across the street. We used to trade casseroles and gardening tips before Anna banned the hedges I liked to plant. "Elaine," she said gently, "I just wanted you to know you did the right thing." "Thank you." "She's telling people you had a breakdown." I smiled. Let her. Let them all. The truth would outlive their whispers. Later that afternoon, I returned to the house one last time. I had asked the realtor for a private hour before the final walkthrough. Not to say goodbye, I had done that already in my heart, but to retrieve something no one else would think to look for. In the upstairs closet, behind a stack of forgotten blankets, was a shoebox. It was scuffed and dusty, held shut with a fraying ribbon. Inside were letters, dozens of them, from Jordan. Crayon drawings from when he was 5, spelling "I love you, Mommy" in shaky handwriting. Birthday cards, Mother's Day notes, scribbled apologies from high school. One, folded into quarters, read, "Sorry I lied. You were right. Love, Jay." I read each one slowly, my fingers brushing the edges like old wounds. I wasn't taking them out of nostalgia. I was taking them because Anna wouldn't keep them, and Jordan might forget they existed. I left everything else. The house was no longer mine, but it was never really hers. As I locked the door behind me, a car screeched into the driveway. Anna stepped out, barefoot again, hair undone, mascara smudged like ash beneath her eyes. "You have no right," she hissed. I turned to face her, calm, unbothered, whole. "I have every right. I owned this house. Jordan lived here. And I raised him, paid for his college, covered your down payment with my retirement fund. You moved your parents in and locked me out. I owed you nothing." She stepped closer. Her voice lowered. "Do you know what you've done?" "Yes," I said. "For once I do." I stepped around her and walked to my car. She didn't follow. Not then. But her threats did. By the time I was back at the hotel, I had 4 voicemails. 1 from her, 1 from her mother, 2 from Jordan. Each one more frantic than the last. "She says you stole the house. She's talking to a lawyer. I don't know how to stop her." I didn't reply. Instead, I called Thomas. He was Tom's oldest friend and the closest thing I had to family left in the legal world. He handled the paperwork after Tom's death. He handled my will. He knew everything. "She's bluffing," he said after I explained. "She's got nothing. You didn't even need to give them notice. Technically, they were never on the title or a lease." "Still," I said, "she's going to try." "Let her," he replied. "You followed the law, and the law favors truth, not tantrums." I slept better that night than I had in years. The next morning, the buyers took possession. They sent a thank you card to my realtor, saying they'd fallen in love with the rose bushes out front. "We can feel the history in this home," they wrote. "We'll take care of it." It was more than Anna had ever said. Later that week, Carol sent me a photo. Anna's parents loading up a U-Haul. No tears, no farewells. Just quiet defeat. She had bet everything on permanence she hadn't earned. Jordan called one last time. I let it ring, then played the message. "I don't know what to say. I think you were right. I just wish it didn't have to happen like this." I whispered to the empty room. "So do I." But some things have to break before they can heal. And I was done bleeding for people who saw me as wallpaper, useful, silent, and easy to ignore. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. I didn't steal the house. I simply took it back. The letter came 2 days later. Thick cream paper, formal script, the kind of envelope that pretends it doesn't come with fangs. It smelled like money and desperation, the scent of someone trying to win a battle they already lost. It was from Anna's lawyer. I opened it slowly, at the little desk in my hotel room, steam rising from the tea I'd made too bitter. The hotel had started to feel like a haven. Clean linens. No one raising their voice from the next room. No one asking why I folded the towels wrong or left my shoes at the door. Silence was a balm. Silence, finally, was mine. The letter was 3 pages long, carefully worded and professionally outraged. It accused me of unlawful eviction, of intentional infliction of emotional distress, and, my personal favorite, malicious sabotage of a marital residence. They said I'd forced the couple and their family out of their home without proper notice or consideration, that my emotional instability had led to a reckless and vindictive decision, and that legal action was forthcoming unless I offered a swift and reasonable financial settlement. I laughed. It wasn't a sound I expected, dry, sudden, too loud for the quiet room, but it bubbled up anyway. Malicious sabotage? That's what Anna was calling it now? Not betrayal, not humiliation, not the months of cold-shouldered cruelty, but my act of sabotage? I read the letter twice. I wanted to understand the game she was playing. She'd always liked strategy, calculations, making cruelty look like concern. A master of disguise, that one. I called Thomas. He answered on the second ring, his voice as calm and grounded as ever. Got the letter, did you? You've already seen it? I have. Their lawyer emailed me directly. Very dramatic. She wants a settlement. She wants to scare you. People like Anna bluff first and think later. I could almost hear him shaking his head on the other end. You did everything by the book, Elaine. The title was clean. The sale was legal. No contract, no lease, no tenancy. This is nothing but noise. She'll push harder. She can. But when it gets to court, if it ever does, we'll ask the real questions. Why was the rightful homeowner sleeping in her car? Why was she locked out of her own kitchen? Why was her name erased from her mailbox? The silence stretched. Then I asked the question that had been sitting like a stone in my chest since the first box was packed. Do you think Jordan knew she was going to do this? Thomas sighed, long and slow. I think he didn't want to know. And that may be worse. After we hung up, I sat by the window, watching clouds drift across the sky like they had nowhere to be. I thought about all the ways I had made myself small to fit in their world. Quiet dinners, polite nods, forced smiles. The way I had apologized for taking up space in my own home. The way I had let them treat me like a guest in a house I'd built, paid for, protected. No more. That evening, I walked to the corner store and bought a journal. Nothing fancy, just a soft leather cover, blank pages waiting to be filled. I began writing everything down, not just the story of the sale, but all of it. The years of slow dismissal, the dinners where I was spoken over, the months I had stayed silent out of love, out of fear, out of hope that Jordan would wake up and see me. I wrote until my hand cramped and the tea went cold. The next morning, I had breakfast at a quiet diner where no one knew my name. It was freedom in its purest form. Eggs over medium. Toast with too much butter. A waitress who called me sweetheart and never asked me who I lived with. Halfway through my coffee, my phone buzzed. Jordan. I let it ring, then opened the voicemail after it stopped. Mom, I just got off the phone with Anna's lawyer. I didn't know she was going to do this. I swear. I'm trying to talk her down. I don't want this to get ugly. Can we please talk? Just the two of us? I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. He wanted things calm again. Back to normal. But normal had never existed. Not since she moved in with her rules and her boundaries and her cold little corrections. Not since I let myself believe that silence was easier than truth. 3 more days passed. Carol called with an update. She's telling people you had a breakdown, that you're emotionally unstable. Let her. Everyone knows better, Elaine. We saw the way she treated you. We just didn't know how bad it got. There it was again. That word. We. We saw. We heard. We did nothing. I didn't hold it against them. Cowardice is contagious, and kindness sometimes hides behind curtains. On the 7th day after the sale, I received a second letter. This one was thinner, less pompous. A single page from Anna's lawyer offering to settle privately to avoid escalating litigation. They were asking for $20,000, emotional damages, lost rent, sudden relocation fees. I took it to Thomas. He chuckled. Do you want to counter or crush it outright? Let's do both. We drafted a response. It wasn't harsh, it was precise. It cited laws. It included documentation. It outlined the timeline, the ownership, the recorded conversations. And then it did something Anna hadn't expected. It asked for damages in return. Emotional distress, defamation, unjust enrichment. It was no longer a bluff. Now it was a reckoning. I signed it and sealed it without trembling. Anna had picked the wrong woman to silence. She'd pushed the wrong person out of the wrong house. Now she was learning what happens when the doormat stands up and locks the door behind her. The silence from Anna's end lasted almost a week. No letters, no voicemails, no dramatic doorstep scenes or desperate calls from blocked numbers. For 7 days, the world around me was still, and I let it be. I spent my mornings walking along the river trail near the hotel, where the water moved without apology, never asking for permission to change its course. I liked that. I liked being near something that didn't care who approved of its direction. But peace, when you've lived without it for too long, feels suspicious, like a lull in a storm. And storms don't vanish, they gather. It came on a Sunday. Fitting. The day reserved for worship, reflection, and in my case, confrontation. I had just finished folding laundry in the little hotel kitchenette. Soft towels that weren't mine, but still felt more like home than anything Anna ever touched, when I heard the knock. 2 soft raps, then silence. No voice, no footsteps walking away. I opened the door, and there he was. Jordan. He looked tired. That kind of tired that lives in the bones, that creeps up behind the eyes and stays there. His hair was uncombed, his shirt wrinkled. He held a coffee cup in one hand, like it could shield him from the conversation he had come to start. "Hi, Mom," he said. I didn't move. I didn't invite him in. Not yet. "You found me." Carol told me which hotel. A pause. I asked her not to say anything, but she thought I should talk to you. Said you've been different lately. Different? I raised an eyebrow. Stronger. He said it like it was unfamiliar, like it made him nervous. I let him stand there long enough to feel the weight of it, the role reversal, the consequence. Then I stepped aside and gestured toward the small table near the window. He sat down slowly, like someone approaching a confessional. "I didn't come to defend her," he said. "Good." He stared at the coffee cup, spinning it between his fingers. I waited. I had no need to fill the silence for him anymore. "She lied to me," he said. "About the lawyer, about the house, about how things went down. She told everyone you were unstable." I nodded once. "And what did you believe?" He didn't answer. That was answer enough. "I didn't know she'd moved your things. I didn't know she changed the locks. I thought you'd left on your own." "You mean I walked away from my home, my son, my memories, For no reason? I didn't want to believe she'd do something like that. So I didn't ask the right questions. I looked at him for a long moment. My son. The boy I'd raised on oatmeal and bedtime stories, scraped knees and overdue bills. The man sitting in front of me wasn't cruel. He wasn't evil. He was something harder to forgive. He was weak. I let it happen, he whispered. I watched her push you out, and I did nothing. That's true. His shoulders slumped, the confession too heavy to hold. I thought keeping peace in my marriage meant staying neutral. But neutral isn't real, is it? When someone's hurting and you say nothing, you've chosen a side. You have. I'm sorry. The words hung between us like threadbare lace. Fragile. Late. You didn't stand up for me when it mattered, I said. Not when she iced me out of family dinners. Not when she called me overbearing for caring. Not when she erased my name from the mailbox and replaced it with hers. He nodded. I know. I gave you that house as a home. I never wanted to hold it over you. I didn't want to own you. I just wanted you to be safe, happy, loved. I was, for a while. And then? He looked up at me, something breaking behind his eyes. She turned everything into a transaction. Every gesture had a cost. Every act of love came with a receipt. And by the time I realized it, I'd already let her push you out. I didn't just lose the house, Mom. I lost you. I didn't reach for him. I didn't wipe his tears. I let him sit in it. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is let them feel the full weight of their choices. What happens now? He asked. That depends on you. I'm not asking you for money, or the house, or to fix this. I need to know if there's a way back. A way back to what? To you. To some kind of relationship. I studied him. Not the son I'd imagined, not the man I'd hoped he'd grow into, but the person he was now. Ashamed, humbled, human. You walked past my pain for years, I said. And now you're asking to return without knowing the road. That's not how it works. I want to learn. Then start by standing. Not for me. For yourself. Leave the woman who made you silent. Find your own voice. And maybe one day, when you've found it, we can talk as equals. He nodded slowly. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't closure. But it was a start. He stood, left the coffee untouched, and walked to the door. Just before leaving, he turned back. Did you really mean to sell the house like that? Just gone? In one stroke? No, I said. It wasn't one stroke. It was 1,000 paper cuts before it. He didn't answer, just nodded once, then left. I stood by the window, watching him walk away, not broken, not redeemed, but finally aware. And I felt nothing but air rushing in, like someone had opened a window in a long sealed room. The past was behind me. What came next was mine to choose. I hadn't planned on going back, not to the neighborhood, not to that street, not to the house I once called home. But life has a strange way of folding the past into the present when you least expect it. It started with an invitation, tucked into an envelope with no return address, hand-delivered to the hotel front desk. No postage, no name on the outside. Just a neat little card, ivory and gold, the kind people use for brunches, baby showers, and events where apologies are buried under mimosas. You are cordially invited to a neighborhood gathering at the Callahan residence. I stared at it for a long time. The Callahan residence. Not my name anymore. Not my house. The words were chosen carefully, cold and factual. Not Elaine's home. Not Jordan's childhood home. Just another address now. I don't know why I went. Curiosity, maybe. or closure. Or maybe I just wanted to look at it one more time with new eyes, eyes that no longer wept for what was lost. It was a bright Saturday, unseasonably warm for mid-fall. The air held the last whispers of summer, and the trees along the street were just beginning to flame with red. I wore my navy blouse, the one Tom used to say made me look like I knew something the world didn't. I hadn't worn it in years. The new owners had painted the shutters, a soft green. The roses I planted in the front yard were still there, though trimmed back and shaped into something far too neat for my taste. The porch swing was gone. So was the wind chime. I walked up the driveway like a stranger. No one recognized me. That was the point, I think. To disappear into a place that used to hold your memories and find it no longer flinches at your footsteps. Carol saw me first. She was holding a plate of cookies and chatting with someone I didn't recognize, probably a new couple from a few streets over. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You came," she said, surprised and breathless. "I didn't think I would," I replied. She handed me a cookie and lowered her voice. "They've been trying to pretend nothing happened. Anna's been quiet since the sale. Jordan moved into a condo last week, alone." I nodded. "I know." She glanced around. "Are you okay?" "I'm becoming okay." There were folding chairs set up in the backyard, white tents, and a table full of potluck dishes. Someone had brought a crock pot full of chili. Another neighbor played light jazz through a portable speaker, the kind of background noise meant to mask tension. And then, as if summoned by the silence that followed my arrival, Anna appeared. She looked thinner, paler. Her hair was done, but it no longer had that immaculate shine she used to maintain like a badge of control. She wore a beige wrap dress and flat shoes, no jewelry, no smile. She saw me instantly. For a moment, she just stared. No words, no polite mask, just raw, blinking disbelief. Then she turned away and vanished inside the house. I didn't follow. It wasn't my place anymore. It wasn't my war either. Instead, I found a chair in the corner of the yard, beneath the tree Jordan and I had planted when he was 10. It had grown tall, taller than the house now, and its leaves trembled in the breeze like it knew something it couldn't say. I sat quietly, watching people laugh and eat and avoid the topic hanging in the air like smoke. No one mentioned the sale. No one asked where I'd been. They knew. They all knew. But shame works best when everyone agrees to call it silence. Eventually, Anna came back outside. She didn't come near me. She circled, greeted, performed. But she didn't speak to me. Until I stood to leave. I was almost at the sidewalk when I heard her voice, soft, clipped, desperate. "Elaine." I turned. She stood a few feet away, arms crossed, jaw tight. "I didn't think you'd come." "I almost didn't." She hesitated. "Why did you?" "I wanted to see what survival looks like from the outside." Her face twisted, just slightly. "You ruined everything." "No," I said, steady. "I ended something that was already broken. There's a difference." She took a step forward. "You humiliated me." "You did that to yourself." "I was trying to build a life," she whispered. "One that didn't include chaos." "You mean people. People who didn't fit your aesthetic." She didn't argue. That was new. "You think this is over?" she said. "That you get to walk away the victor?" "I'm not the victor," I replied. "I'm just no longer the victim." And I walked away. At my new apartment, I unpacked slowly, deliberately, folding each piece of my past into a new shape. The wedding photo I kept, the one with Tom's arms wrapped around me like a promise. My nursing certificate, yellowing now, but still proud. A chipped mug with a sunflower painted on it, Jordan's first art project in the 3rd grade. I almost left it behind. Almost. And then there was the shoebox of letters. I placed it on the top shelf of the bedroom closet, not to forget, but to remember on my own terms. The things I'd kept, the things I'd let go. Pain doesn't disappear, it settles. And I was learning to let it settle in a place that didn't control me anymore. The neighbors were quiet. A retired couple lived below me and played jazz on Saturday mornings. The woman across the hall, Cynthia, introduced herself with a plate of lemon bars and an offer to water my plants if I ever traveled. "No one should come home to dead flowers," she said, smiling, like she knew what it meant to be forgotten. There were no surprise visits from Anna. No knocks at the door with threats wrapped in civility. No Jordan trying to play peacekeeper in a war he never bothered to stop. Just mornings and evenings, soft coffee and cooler air, the rhythm of a life beginning again. About a week after I moved in, Carol came over with a housewarming basket, tea, candles, and a small succulent in a ceramic pot shaped like a fox. "I figured you'd like something that thrives quietly," she said. We sat on the balcony with our feet up on the railing, sipping tea that had gone lukewarm in the fading light. She looked out over the street, then back at me. "You really did it." "I did." "And how do you feel?" I didn't answer immediately. I watched a moth flutter near the porch light, drawn to something it didn't understand. "I feel like I finally stepped out of a costume I didn't know I was wearing." She smiled, but there was sadness behind it. "You know, I envied you." "Me?" "You had a family, a house full of life, or so I thought." "Appearances are persuasive. Aren't they just?" We sat in the silence that only old friends can share, the kind that doesn't need filling. A few days later, a package arrived. No return address, just my name written carefully across the top in Jordan's handwriting. Inside was a letter. No demands, no defenses. Just an apology written in the kind of plain language that feels heavier than poetry. He said he was seeing a therapist, that he'd moved into a small apartment not far from my new place, though he didn't include the address. He said he needed time to understand how much of himself he'd handed over to someone else before he ever asked who he was. He didn't ask for a meeting. He didn't ask to come over. Instead, he asked for something rarer. He asked for the chance to rebuild something new, slowly, respectfully, only if I wanted it. I folded the letter and placed it inside the journal I kept on my nightstand. I didn't answer him. Not yet. Healing isn't polite. It doesn't arrive on schedule or ask for consent. It takes its time, and I was still learning how to give it mine. That weekend, I volunteered at the community center downtown. They needed help organizing books for the adult literacy program. I hadn't realized how much I missed the smell of paper, the quiet clicking of pens, the joy in someone sounding out their first full sentence. It reminded me of who I was before I became someone's mother, someone's problem, someone's afterthought. At the end of the day, one of the women, Janine, asked if I'd consider tutoring. She was 35, raising 2 kids, and determined to pass her GED before the year ended. "Are you a teacher?" she asked. "Not officially," I said, "but I've spent a lifetime helping people find their voice." She smiled. "Then you're exactly who I need." That night, I returned home with a full heart and tired hands. I made dinner, just for me. No one to ask what was for dessert. No one to criticize the brand of tomatoes I used. Just me, and a glass of wine, and the steady comfort of knowing that I chose this. Every piece of it. As I washed the dishes, the radio played a song I hadn't heard in years, something from the 70s, soft and familiar. Tom used to hum it while shaving in the morning. I stood there, hands still in the soapy water, eyes closed, letting the memory pass through me like a breeze. It didn't ache anymore. It just lingered, then left. I dried my hands and stepped onto the balcony. The moon was high, and the city buzzed softly below. Somewhere out there, Anna was still spinning her stories. Jordan was trying to untangle his. And me? I was finally learning how to write mine. Not with spite, not with regret, but with clarity. And this time, the story was mine alone to tell. It started again with a knock. Not frantic, not angry. Just two slow, almost embarrassed taps at my apartment door. The kind that says, "I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'm here anyway." I was in the middle of labeling flashcards for Janine's next tutoring session. I looked at the door, then the clock. Almost 6. A cool October breeze was sneaking in through the cracked kitchen window, bringing with it the smell of wet leaves and something else: change. When I opened the door, I found Jordan. He looked different. Not dramatically, but enough. His shirt was wrinkled in a way that said he dressed himself for comfort, not presentation. His eyes were tired, but not in the hollow way they'd been before. And in his hands, he held a small paper bag. "I brought dinner," he said, like that alone could smooth the edges. I hesitated. I wasn't expecting company. "I won't stay long. I was in the neighborhood." That was a lie. He'd never been to this part of town. Too small, too modest, too far from what Anna once called aspirational neighborhoods. I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, glancing around like the walls might speak. The room wasn't big, but it was mine. The bookshelves were full, the kitchen counter tidy, the balcony door open just enough to let in the last blush of daylight. My world. Small, quiet, intentionally unshared. "I didn't know what you liked anymore," he said, pulling out 2 containers. "So I got Thai." I raised an eyebrow. "You hated Thai." "I did," he admitted. "But turns out I only hated how Anna ordered it. Too much heat, no flavor." We sat at the table, the one I'd bought secondhand, and painted a soft sage green. It wobbled slightly, but I liked it that way. Like it had history. For a few minutes we just ate. No questions, no apologies. No apologies I trusted anyway. Just silence. Familiar, but not hostile. Eventually, he broke it. "She filed for divorce." I didn't look up. "She said she couldn't be married to someone who didn't value appearances." Her words. I nodded slowly. "I assume you didn't fight it." I didn't say a word. That, at least, was progress. "She's trying to keep the condo," he added. "Not that I care. It never felt like mine anyway." Not much did. He flinched but didn't argue. "She blamed you for everything, you know," he said. "Told everyone you turned vindictive, that you sold the house out of spite." "I sold the house to survive," I corrected. "She just didn't think I'd choose myself over her comfort." He nodded. "She still doesn't." We sat in that for a while. The sound of a neighbor's TV drifted through the wall, something cheerful and laugh-tracked. It felt intrusive. Life going on, like it always does, unaware of the quiet reckoning happening 1 floor above. "She tried to reach out," he said suddenly. "Anna?" He nodded. "Texted me last week, said she made a mistake, said we should have handled you differently." I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. Anna didn't regret the hurt, just the consequence. "She doesn't miss you," he said, voice lower now. "She misses control." I looked at him for the first time since he'd walked through the door. "And what do you miss?" He didn't answer right away, just stared at his nearly empty plate, then set his fork down like it was too heavy. "I miss not recognizing myself," he said. "It was easier than seeing who I became." There it was, the real sentence. He looked up, eyes glassy. "You spent your whole life putting me first. I thought I could do the same for her. That's what love looks like, right?" "No," I said gently. "That's what martyrdom looks like. Love makes room for two people. It doesn't erase one for the comfort of the other." He ran a hand through his hair. "I didn't know how to stop her, and when you left, it felt easier to just let her keep spinning the story." "I know. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. But it did." We sat in that truth. It didn't burn as much anymore. Time does that. It doesn't heal so much as sand the edges down. After a while, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I've been writing. To myself. To you. To whatever's left of the boy who used to call you his hero." I didn't take the envelope. Not yet. "I don't need to read it to forgive you," I said. "But I might need to read it to understand you." He nodded. "Take your time." I set it beside my plate and stood. He did too. At the door, he hesitated. "I don't know how to fix this." "You don't," I said. "You just show up. Keep showing up. With food, with honesty, with nothing but your real self." He smiled, just slightly. "I can do that." "Good," I said, and opened the door. As he stepped into the hallway, he turned back one last time. "Mom, do you still wear the pearls?" "Not for you," I said. "Not for anyone. Just for me." He nodded, smiled again, and left. I closed the door, leaned against it, and let the silence return. Not heavy, not hollow, just quiet. And for the first time in a long time, that quiet felt like hope. The envelope sat on my nightstand for 3 days. I didn't rush to open it. Not because I was afraid of what was inside, but because I needed to decide how I wanted to feel when I read it. Anger, forgiveness, closure. The truth is, I wasn't ready to choose. And for once, I allowed myself the luxury of waiting, letting things arrive on their own schedule, like spring breaking through frost. On the 4th morning, I made a pot of tea and sat in the armchair by the window. The sky was soft gray, the kind that drapes everything in quiet. I opened the envelope. His handwriting hadn't changed much, still slightly slanted, careful but hurried. I could see his effort. The ink told me more than the words did. The letter wasn't long, just 2 pages. No dramatic pleas, no grand declarations, just a slow, steady unraveling of the person he'd become and the person he was trying to remember how to be. He wrote about the moments he failed to speak up, the nights he heard Anna mock me under her breath and said nothing, the mornings he let me make coffee while she scowled from behind her perfect smile. He confessed to watching me shrink and mistaking my silence for strength, never realizing it came from exhaustion, not courage. He said he missed me, not the version of me he'd gotten used to, the quiet helper, the background character. He missed the woman who used to laugh out loud at sitcoms, who burned toast when she danced in the kitchen, the woman who taught him to ride a bike and patch a scraped knee without tears. And he wrote one sentence I hadn't expected. "I don't want to fix us, Mom. I want to know us, now." I folded the letter slowly and placed it back in the envelope. There was nothing more to do with it right then. I didn't need to call or write back. I just needed to let the words settle, find their weight, and decide if they could build a bridge across the distance that remained. That afternoon, I walked to the community center. It had become a kind of sanctuary, structured, warm, filled with people clawing their way toward second chances. I liked being there. I liked being needed without being used. Janine was waiting at our usual table, notebooks spread out like armor. She beamed when she saw me, all bright eyes and nervous determination. "I passed the science section," she said, nearly breathless. "I knew you would." "I didn't." "That's because you've been told your whole life not to trust your own mind," I said. "But look what it's done anyway." She blinked at that. The compliment startled her more than the test. We spent the next hour working through essay prompts. Halfway through, she paused, tapping her pen against the table. "You're different," she said. "Different how?" "Lighter, like you've put something down." I smiled at her. Maybe I have. On the walk home, the air smelled like cinnamon and chimney smoke. Autumn was settling in for good now. The leaves had turned brittle, the wind sharper. People were decorating their windows for Halloween. Orange lights, paper ghosts, smiling skeletons. It used to be something I did with Jordan when he was little. He loved cutting out bats from construction paper and taping them to the windows. I passed a coffee shop and stopped. Through the glass, I saw him. Jordan. He was sitting at a corner table with a book open, not reading, just staring at the pages. He looked tired. Not broken, just quietly undone. Like a man trying to find the thread that once held everything together. He didn't see me. I watched him for a moment. Not out of cruelty, but out of curiosity. The way you look at someone you used to know deeply, but now view through a stranger's eyes. Notice the small changes. The way he tapped his thumb against the table when he thought. The nervous way he stirred his coffee even when it was still. Then I kept walking. Because this wasn't my moment to fix. It was his. That evening, Carol came by with a bottle of wine and leftover apple crisp from her church's fall bake sale. We sat on the balcony under a pile of blankets, watching the stars poke holes in the sky. "Do you think people really change?" she asked. I thought about Jordan, about the letter, about Anna, whose silence had been louder than her cruelty. "Some do," I said, "if they want it enough, if they're willing to sit with the version of themselves they don't like. And if they're not, then we let them go." She nodded slowly. "And Jordan?" "I think he's just beginning to meet himself for the first time." She clinked her glass against mine. "To beginnings, then." "To boundaries," I added, "and the peace they bring." Later, as I cleaned up the dishes, I glanced at the envelope on my nightstand again. The past had been written, folded, delivered. But the future? That was still mine to write. And I had just sharpened the pencil. It was nearly midnight when the phone rang. I'd just turned the last page of a book I'd been slowly savoring for weeks. One of those quiet, aching novels about people learning to forgive themselves. The kind of story that doesn't rush, that sits with your heart like a steady hand. I was still in that quiet space between the last word and real life when the ring broke through it, sharp and unexpected. For a moment, I didn't move. Midnight calls rarely bring good news. The screen lit up with a number I didn't recognize, but something in me already knew. I answered. "Mom?" It wasn't Jordan. It was her. Anna. Her voice, always smooth and polished, was frayed now, barely held together. She didn't start with pleasantries. No, "Hi," no, "How are you?" Just my name, said like an admission. "I shouldn't be calling." "Then don't," I said, soft but firm. "I need just a few minutes." There was a pause, a long inhale on her end, like she was bracing herself for impact. "I'm not asking for anything," she said finally. "I just wanted to, I don't know, say it out loud, that I see it now." I didn't respond. I wanted to hear what it meant to her. "I was awful to you," she continued. "And not just once, for years. I controlled everything, including the story people told about you, about me, and I let that story become more important than the truth. Still, I said nothing. I don't expect you to forgive me, she added. I wouldn't. I don't hate you, I said finally. She let out a short breath, surprised maybe. Why not? Because hating you would mean carrying you with me, and I've put that load down. Silence stretched between us, not uncomfortable, just honest. Jordan told me he saw you, she said after a beat. That you talked, that you didn't shut him out. I didn't let him back in either. There's a difference. He's changed. He's changing. That's not the same. I heard her swallow on the other end, as if she were trying to keep something down. Pride, maybe. Or grief. I wanted you gone, she whispered. I didn't even hide it. You were too much, too involved, too present. And then you weren't, and everything started to fall apart. You didn't want a mother-in-law, I said. You wanted a silent investor. That's exactly what I wanted. The honesty was sharp, brutal, but refreshing. She wasn't twisting it this time. She wasn't performing. I thought if I could just build this perfect life, if I could control every detail, then I'd finally feel safe, she said. But the more I pushed people out, the emptier I felt. Safety isn't found in control, I said. It's found in connection. I didn't know how to connect with you. You intimidated me. You loved Jordan in a way I didn't understand. You were selfless, and it made me feel small. You weren't small, Anna. You were just afraid. I still am. I didn't just lose a house, she said, her voice breaking now. I lost a mirror, one I didn't want to look into. I wasn't trying to ruin you, Anna. I know. That's what makes it worse. You were kind, and I used that kindness like a weapon. Another silence. I don't expect a second chance, she said. But I wanted you to know I'm trying. I've started therapy. Real therapy. Not the performative kind. I'm working on why I needed to control everything. Why I turned motherhood into competition. Why I couldn't let you in. I hope it helps, I said. I don't deserve your hope. It's not about you deserving it, I said gently. It's about me refusing to carry bitterness anymore. She let out a breath, shaky, uncertain. I think you might be the strongest person I've ever met. No, I replied. I just got tired of disappearing. There was a pause. Then, thank you. For answering. For listening. I wasn't sure you would. I didn't answer for you, I said. I answered for myself. Because sometimes healing means facing the voices we once feared. She was quiet for a long time. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, I'm sorry. I know. She didn't ask to see me. Didn't ask to fix anything. Maybe that was the apology in its purest form, just being said aloud, without expectation. I sat there for a while, staring at the darkened screen, the silence now thick with finality. Not the bitter kind. The kind that gently closes a door you no longer need to walk through. I made another cup of tea and stepped onto the balcony. The night air was cool, the stars above dim but steady. I thought of all the versions of me Anna had never bothered to know. The tired mother, the grieving widow, the woman who hummed old songs while folding laundry, the teacher who stayed late, the friend who remembered birthdays, the neighbor who baked pies in the fall. She'd missed all of that in her pursuit of perfection. But I hadn't. I remembered who I was. And now, finally, so did she. The next morning, I wrote in my journal. She called, and for the first time, she didn't ask for space or control or money. She just asked to be heard. And I listened. Not for her redemption, but for my own release. I think we're both learning how to be people, not performances. Maybe that's enough. Then I closed the book, laced up my shoes, and stepped into the morning sun. The morning after Anna called, I woke up before the alarm. Not because I had anywhere urgent to be, but because my body had finally started to expect peace. The kind of peace that doesn't need to be earned or negotiated. It simply exists. My apartment, though modest, had become a sanctuary. Every corner held something that belonged to me, not someone else's version of me, not a placeholder between usefulness and exile. Just me. I made oatmeal and stood by the window, watching the world outside stretch itself into another day. Across the street, Cynthia was walking her small terrier in a bright pink coat, waving to a mailman she probably saw every morning. Somewhere down the hall, a child's cartoon theme song played on low volume, muffled by apartment walls and early morning routines. It was all so gloriously ordinary. No staged perfection, no tiptoeing around tension, just people living. My phone buzzed once, a text, not from Anna, not from Jordan. It was from Janine. Pass the essay section. One more test and I'm done. Can we meet Thursday? You're a miracle worker. I smiled, typing back. You did the work. I just reminded you that you could. Thursday works. Proud of you. I placed the phone down and caught my reflection in the window. For a second, I saw the woman I used to be, tight shoulders, eyes always scanning the room for what needed fixing. But she wasn't there anymore. In her place was someone softer, but not weaker. Someone who had finally learned that love, to be real, had to include herself. Later that afternoon, I decided to stop by the grocery store. Nothing major, just some lemons, fresh bread, and tea I liked that the hotel never carried. I liked walking there now. The streets were familiar, but not haunted. No one looked at me like I was someone else's shadow. I was checking out when I heard a voice behind me. Elaine? I turned. Daniel. Anna's Daniel. He looked startled, not because he'd seen me, but because he clearly hadn't expected to feel anything about it. His tie was crooked, hair a little longer than I remembered. The man who once smiled through perfectly curated brunches now looked real. A little worn around the edges. A little freer, too. Daniel, I said, not cold, but not warm either. He glanced at the lemons and bread in my basket, then gave a hesitant smile. You look well. I am. Good. That's good. There was a silence between us, like two people standing on opposite shores of a river they never meant to cross again. But he stepped closer, hands in his coat pockets. I don't want to take up your time, he said. But I've been meaning to say something. I tilted my head. When everything happened, when Anna filed for divorce and the dust started to settle, I spent a lot of time angry. At her. At myself. At you even, for a while. Fair, I said. You were standing close enough to feel the blast. I didn't understand then, he said. What it feels like to be erased quietly, smiled at while being diminished, controlled with kindness until your identity is a polite nod in someone else's story. I nodded slowly. You learned that the hard way. I did. We stood there for a moment, the beeping of grocery scanners and rustling of bags filling the space. I know we were never close, he said, but I watched you. I watched what you did for Jordan, what you gave without keeping score. And I never said thank you, because I didn't know then what that kind of love cost. You do now? Yes. He looked away for a moment, then back. Anna's still trying to rewrite the story, but fewer people are buying it. She's good at narratives, I said. He nodded. But you told the truth, in how you lived, in how you left. And that truth, It stuck. As he stepped away, he paused. If Jordan ever forgets who you are again, remind him of this version of you. The one who walked away. The one who built something better. I paid for my groceries and walked home slowly, letting the weight of those words settle in my chest. Not heavy, not painful, just firm. Like a truth I already knew, spoken aloud by someone who used to look through me. That evening, I poured myself a cup of chamomile tea and pulled out my journal. The pages were filling faster now, not with anger, not even with grief, but with clarity. I wrote, "Today someone who used to ignore me saw me, not because I forced him to, but because I stood still long enough for him to catch up. That's what healing does. It doesn't chase. It waits." I placed the journal back in the drawer and turned on the radio. Something soft played. Jazz, I think, and I let it drift through the room like perfume. I curled up in the armchair, legs tucked under me, the quiet pressing gently against my skin. Tomorrow, I'd meet with Janine. Later that week, Carol and I were planning to try that new Greek restaurant. Life, once filled with tiptoeing and tension, was now shaped by the people who showed up, not out of obligation, but because they wanted to. And as for Jordan, I wasn't waiting. But if he returned, truly returned, I'd be here. Not with open arms, but with open eyes. Because love that endures must also evolve. And mine had. It had become something stronger than sacrifice. The day Jordan knocked on my door again, there was no drama. No tension humming behind his eyes. No frantic need to explain. Just a simple presence. He was holding a paper bag that smelled faintly of cinnamon and clove, like he'd stopped at the bakery down the street that I'd mentioned once in passing. I opened the door and stepped aside. He didn't speak until I had poured 2 cups of tea, and we were seated across from each other, at my wobbly little kitchen table, now marked with faint scratches from daily life and healing. "I didn't come with a speech," he said. "Good. I've heard enough speeches to last a lifetime." He smiled at that, tired, yes, but honest. It was a look I remembered from before Anna, before the condo, before appearances replaced affection. "I'm learning not to perform anymore," he said. "For anyone." "That's a good start." He sipped his tea and set the cup down gently, like he was afraid to make too much noise. "I saw Anna last week," he said. "We met to sign the final papers. She was different. She always is when the audience changes." His lips twitched. "Yeah, I noticed that too." He leaned back slightly, hands resting on his lap. Not clenched, not defensive, just still. "She asked if we could try again," he said. "Said she missed the life we built. I told her there was no life there, just construction around a hollow center." I looked at him, not as my son, but as a man. "That was brave," I said. "It was overdue." We sat in silence for a few minutes, letting the steam rise between us. I could see him scanning the room with his eyes, taking in the small details, my bookshelf, the candle still flickering on the counter, the plants I'd managed not to kill. "This place suits you," he said. "It's mine." "I never asked," he said slowly, "after you sold the house, how it felt, letting it go." I stirred my tea and thought for a moment. It was like exhaling after holding my breath for years. At first it hurt, but then it felt necessary, like shedding skin that no longer fits. He nodded, and I could see the truth of that sitting heavy on his shoulders. "I didn't know how to protect you," he said. "Or maybe I didn't want to, because protecting you would have meant standing up to her, and I wasn't ready for what that meant about me. I let that sit, because the truth deserves space." "You didn't need to protect me," I said. You needed to remember who I was, and that I mattered. I forgot. I know. He took another sip, slower this time. His hands no longer fidgeted. The guilt in his posture had softened into something else. Something like understanding. I'm not here to ask you to forget, he said, or even to fully forgive. I just want to be better, bit by bit. I want to earn a version of you in my life that doesn't come from obligation. I studied him, the lines around his eyes, the wear in his voice, the way he was no longer trying to fill the silence, but letting it exist. I'm not interested in being a cautionary tale, I said. I want to be a part of your story only if it's mutual. No more mothers who give until they vanish. No more sons who take until they forget how to ask. He nodded. I understand. I believed him. There were no apologies that day. Not the kind that come with flowers or promises. Just presence. Just the effort of showing up, not for rescue, but for reconciliation. And it was enough. More than enough. After he left, I opened the paper bag. Inside were 2 pastries and a folded note. I don't know how to rebuild what we had, but I'd like to build something new. From the ground up. If you're willing. I folded the note and placed it in my journal. It didn't make my chest ache. It didn't make me weep. It made me feel still. Whole. Like a door had opened, and for once, I wasn't afraid to decide whether to walk through it. The next morning, I met Janine at the community center. She passed her final test. She was crying when I walked in, but not from sorrow. I did it, she said, her voice shaking. I really did it. You did, I said, wrapping my arms around her. And no one can take it from you. That afternoon, as the light slanted just right through the window, I realized something I hadn't said aloud yet. I had done it too. I had reclaimed my name, my place, my peace. I had chosen my own narrative. One not written by guilt or silence or the desperate need to belong. And Jordan? He was no longer my responsibility. But maybe, just maybe, he could be my son again. Not because he needed me, but because for the first time in a long time, he saw me and chose to stay. And that was enough. Now I live in a sunlit apartment near the sea. I teach watercolor on Saturdays. The house is gone. So is the pain. I don't miss it. I don't miss them. I kept the deed. They lost the home. And me. I stood on my balcony as the last of the autumn leaves fell, the sky a tapestry of quiet grays and hopeful golds. I had walked through pain and silence, through rooms where my voice was unwelcome and my heart was an afterthought. And now? Now I stood alone, but never lonely, rooted in my own worth. I had become the author of my story, the painter of my days. Jordan's path was his own. Anna's choices were her own. But my peace? My peace was mine to keep. And in the stillness, I found it waiting for me all along. This story may have ended, but the message lingers. For more raw and real moments like this, click on the left and subscribe to walk alongside more women finding their strength. Healing takes time, but it's possible.